Hello and welcome to this download from Blackwell Online. My name is George Miller, and my guest today is Donna Dickenson. Donna is Emeritus Professor of Medical Ethics at the University of London and author of a host of books on bioethical issues. Her latest book looks at the growing trend towards converting body parts to profit, from eggs and blood to genes and bones. And in the book, she examines the science, the law, and the ethics that underlie it. I asked her first to tell me what she meant by body shopping.
It describes what I call the unprecedented commercialization of the human body from BC to AD, before conception to after death. And that includes things like the massive global market that's developing in eggs and sperm, which started in the US but is now spread, for example, to Eastern Europe, with instances of women being trafficked for eggs and for sex at the same time. And on the other side, the end, after death, we have things like the Alastair Cooks scandal, the way in which Cook's bones and those of 1,800 other people were stolen from a funeral home and were transformed into things like dental veneers. So those are the shocking stories, and I think, we shouldn't lose sight of those. The shock that provokes, I think, is healthy. But on the other hand, I'm actually more concerned in the book, and personally, with the more ordinary instances, things like the banking of babies' umbilical cord blood or the patenting of human genes, so that 1 in 5 human genes is now the subject of a patent. And this has direct knock-on effects for our clinical care, in that it's much harder for us to get cheaper medicines if pharmaceutical companies that hold patents on the genes manage to block cheaper alternatives.
I did want to talk a little bit about the Alastair Cooks case, which you mentioned, because I have to confess, my own ignorance was such that I didn't realise there was a trade, an illegal, illicit trade in bones, and that a nonagenarian's bones would be ransacked in the United States in the last few years.
Well, it really is a horrible story. Alastair Cooks, the author of The Letter from America, the well-known journalist, in death himself became a letter from America, a sort of warning of the worst of body shopping. As his body was lying in a New York funeral parlour, he had died at the age of 94 and had metastatic cancer that had spread. So this was particularly shocking for that reason. As his body was lying in this funeral parlour, it was ransacked, as you say, for the thigh bones. And this happened to, as I say, something like 1,800 people. It was a New York criminal ring headed by someone called Master Marino, who's now been indicted and in fact sentenced to, I think, 18 years in prison. So eventually he was apprehended, but in the course of his crimes and those of the rest of the ring, 1,800 other families suffered. And the uses that can be made of bones are really quite extensive. So some of these wound up as dental veneers in the UK through a firm in Swindon, which was identified as unwittingly having imported these products. And that meant then that they in turn passed to a number of UK hospitals. Now, most of those hospitals came forward and said, OK, we're not importing any more bones from this firm, and we are alerting all of our patients. Cook's daughter, Susan Kittredge, said, imagine if you knew that you had received bone transplants from a nonagenarian who died of a cancer which might conceivably have contaminated his bones. And she said, you couldn't run away from yourself fast enough. And I think that did sum up a lot of the hospital's reactions. On the other hand, there were 3 London teaching hospitals that refused to alert their patients. So it is possible that there is still some of that bone out there.
Now, just to finish with the Alastair Cooks story, but to use it to open up a bigger question, I think most people who lack a medical or legal background would naturally feel revulsion and horror at what happened and know that something wrong had been done, but they might be hard pressed to say exactly what point of law had been infringed there. And that brings up the whole issue of ownership of the body, property rights in the body, to whom body parts belong. And your book is very interesting about that. Can you say a little bit about how the law stands at the moment as regards ownership?
Yes, I think actually people are more shocked when they find out what the legal position is than they are even by the horrors of things like the Cook case. The Cook case is perhaps not the very best example of this because it's someone else's body. That is, it's the disposition of the body after death. But in terms of your own body, this is what I think is really surprising to most people. And that is that you don't actually legally own your body. You don't own your body, that is, in the sense that tissue taken from it and used afterwards is yours to dispose of as you see fit. The law traditionally took the view that tissue, once it had left the body, was what was called no one's thing. And it took that view because, traditionally, the tissue wasn't of any value. It's modern biotechnology that has given it this value. The Cook example is just one of many. That, in turn, means that the law is, as I said before, lagging behind what biotechnology can do. So that doctrine that it's no one's thing has actually been tested in a number of cases, including one of a man called John Moore. John Moore was a 31-year-old American who developed a form of leukemia and had to have his spleen removed. Now, there was absolutely no doubt that the spleen had to come out. It was 20 times the normal size. So again, you think of the traditional position in the law that the benefit to you as the patient lay in having the diseased tissue removed. Well, there was no question that that was a benefit to John Moore. But after the splenectomy, after the spleen was removed, he was asked to come back to have other tissue taken. So hair, blood, sperm, all sorts of other tissue was taken, and he was told this was necessary for his treatment. He was also asked to sign forms that said, "I hereby renounce any further interest in this tissue." And he kept asking the surgeon, well, why do I have to come down to Los Angeles? He lived in Seattle to do this. And, do I really have to have it all? And the surgeon kept saying, yes, yes, yes. And sending him more and more forms saying, I renounce all interest in my tissue. And finally he got very suspicious and he consulted a lawyer. He refused to sign one of the forms and he consulted a lawyer. And he found that without his knowledge and certainly without his consent, his tissue had been turned into a $3 billion cell line. And that was because the tissue had unusual value. Most of our tissue wouldn't be worth that much. But Moore had very active, what are called T cells, that is, they're immune cells. So he had a very active immune system. And these cells could be turned into a sort of bottomless porridge pot of valuable material, an immortal cell line, and indeed they had been, and also a patent had been taken out on the cells. Moore went to court to try to establish rights in the patent and in the cell line. And he wasn't so much concerned about the money. He was really concerned, he was angry about the fraud and about the fact that his consent had not been sought and about his human dignity or whatever you want to call it. Now, he succeeded in establishing that his consent had not been obtained and that he had been lied to, but he failed to establish that he had any property rights in the $3 billion cell line. And there have been a number of cases since then which have mostly reinforced that.